hearing.
Okay, you just want to sort of.
I'm going
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, this will officially adjourn this committee, and when that's adjourned, then we're done. Then the public hearing will start shortly thereafter. But yeah, we'll make sure you're not.
6:30. Yeah, so we have a public hearing that I'm not going to do, and then we're going to start again at
That's
7 o'clock.
yes, ma'am.
Well, and I wonder if we'll need all those.
The strategy, right? Okay, you want to take out a longer time to do something that doesn't need immediate action?
So,
So that's something that we talk about.
I think that's good. Because we know there's any-
I'm good with whatever, however you guys want to do
I
it.
know.
If you want to, oh, we got to get going. Come on with me. You're keeping the time up here for the public speaks, right? Okay. I didn't bring my phone with me today. Okay. So we got to get going on.
Committee meeting.
Uh,
Okay.
This is about
We ready?
bids, right?
Good. Okay, I'd like to call to order the special committee of the whole meeting, Monday, May 13th, 6:15 p.m. Laura, will you please call the roll?
Peters,
Here.
Foltz.
Here.
Soretta.
Here.
Revolt.
Here.
Kiesling. Here. Waring.
Here.
Fontaine.
Here.
7 present.
All right, thank you. One item only, water, sewer, rubbish. Chairman Serrano.
Yes, this was brought forward to us at one point, and then we kind of tabled it, I believe, but this is about the, really bids for a new agreement for our residents' garbage, rubbish, recycling, and yard waste. So I'll let Pat take it from here and can explain where we're at and how we got here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to make sure that I express my gratitude to the chairman for giving us the opportunity to present this at a later date. We did have a couple of false starts on this. The bid specifications were not available earlier because I was in the process still of writing them. And one of the things that I've had to do is look at our processes, our bid processes, and find in areas where they need improvement and areas where they don't. You know, there's some that Tim has worked on. We'll get into down the road on the sludge lagoon. But this set of bid documents that we've been using for the solid waste have been ones we've been using for several bid cycles. And I don't feel that they properly addressed what is going on in the marketplace. So I made the effort to look at approximately 8 different communities around Ohio that had just gone through a bid process for their solid waste and recycling within the last 12 months. So I was concerned about making sure that we had the proper processes completely defined. So for instance, just to give you some of the color, laying out the timetable from the time that a contract award is made to the time that the service is to begin. In the previous documents, it really wasn't spelled out as clearly that process. So, 10 days, from the time we do the notice of award till the bidder can get documents back to us that we can act upon. And if they fail in that 10-day period, what is the repercussion of that? And then likewise, once we have it back in our possession, how many days do we have to execute on the documents and turn it back around? And then from there, how long do they have to get back their performance bond? So these were things that needed to be ironed out. And in our sludge lagoon contract, we already had done that, but that wasn't available in this one. So that was one of the areas. In addition, looking at what other communities were doing regarding what was required to bid as far as like the bond, 2 bonds. A bid bond, which we're most familiar with, that if you give us a bid and you back out on that bid, that there is a bond that you've posted or cash that the city can collect upon, because we're going to be harmed by this process, and we're going to have to start again, and it may mess up our timetable for when the contract expires and have to do a temporary agreement with our current hauler to be able to bid it out again. So we have these bid bonds, and we do this on all our contracts. But in the one that we had with the city before, we were only asking them to post a $6,000 bond or cash for that. In other communities, the bond is 100% of the first year's cost. So if they're saying that the first year's cost on this is X amount per resident for solid waste plus recycling plus potential curbside service, let's just say that totals, for conversational purposes, $1 million. Then they have to post $1 million bond, because that's the value of it. So not this $6,000 thing. So that was an improvement. And then also, once you have the agreement, once you've been selected and we've executed all the documents, the other thing that was prevalent in other communities is that we would have a performance bond, so that during that first 12 months of the contract, you don't live up to the contractual language that you're required to, and we feel that we have to sever service from you. You have a bonding agent that is going to step in and make the city whole while we go out and rebid it again and pick a different vendor. So those were, again, just another couple examples of what we wanted to get in here. And that just took time to do, so I appreciate your indulgence on that. When I looked at the existing bid documents, the stuff that's in there, that was in there, is in here, and there was just a lot of other materials that needed to be in here. So the one thing that was taken out from last time to this time was the section that dealt with financial incentive for recycling. And so I just want to make the council aware of the difficulties that are being experienced across the country as it comes to recycling. Recycling used to be a very easy market to do. Most of the recyclables in this country were shipped to China, and they were taking all they could get. And so it made recycling really easy. In fact, probably as an editorial as a nation, we've gotten pretty lazy as it relates to making sure our recyclables are pure. So, we don't exactly empty out that 2-liter Pepsi bottle. We just kind of throw the whole thing in. And so what that's led to is that China has said, no, we don't want these recyclables because there's too much mixed stuff in it, and we can't process it, and it's too labor intensive. We don't want it. And now that's been putting a pushback into the U.S. market everywhere with regards to recycling, that it's getting harder and harder to keep the recycling out of the landfills. And so we have to pay particular attention that if that's an objective and a goal we want, which I believe it is, we have to make sure that we try to do something that doesn't cause us to abandon that mission. So I felt that the financial incentive was, from what I've seen in other communities, and I've looked at the bid processes in a number of communities and what the results were, and the financial side of it on recycling is really coming under duress. So what I've substituted in its place was an educational component on this, that we would like the successful bidder to make part of this process an educational program to all the residents in North Canton. What is it that you want recycled? How is it that you want it to be recycled? And that needs to be going on an annual basis. So for them to reach out directly to our residents and say, here's what you need to do, here's what we want, here's what we don't want. I thought that would be probably more helpful to drive up our numbers in that.
So communities are not getting the money anymore?
Yeah, because the recyclers can't get rid of the recyclables, they're saying, well, we don't even want to do recycling. We don't even want to deal with it. We're just going to put it in the trash and just take it to the landfill. And so the market is definitely shrinking with the number of firms that are able to successfully process the recycling.
So, I'm guilty of this too, lack of education. So this is a good component to add, the educational part, because like I threw a pizza box away, and it had some cheese and some stuff stuck in it, like sauce, and I threw it in the recycling. She goes, "You can't throw it in the recycling." I go, "Why?" She goes, "Well, look, there's like cheese on there. That has to be totally clean." So honestly, innocently, we're throwing and thinking we're doing a good thing by recycling, and they're throwing it all in the landfill. So if I would have known that's not the proper way to do it,
You would have eaten the cheese.
I would have eaten the cheese out of the box.
24 hours later.
Eating all the cheese. Why
I'm
waste the
just-
cheese?
I mean,
Eating the cheese.
one at a time here. No, but what I'm saying is like what Pat said, the 2-liter bottle, there's just a little dribble in there, really? But yeah, they have to pitch it because it's not pure enough. So that's really all it is, and I don't read the top of the box of the recycling container that shows the picture. Like, it's confusing, I think. But if there was like a little component, I think really that would make probably a 40% increase in good, clean recycling. That's my 2 cents.
So are you saying that they don't do the recycling now then? I mean, do we still have the green containers going forward?
We do here presently. Kimball still has the ability to process the recycling, and they have a competitive advantage over others. And what I'm saying is that others may come in here and bid on this, and you may find that they may give you a number, and it may or may not be an attractive number, but it probably won't include the recycling, because there's just less and less players in that arena.
But
that
they'll
will
let us
deal with
know
it.
at that time whether
Oh,
they
yeah.
do or not.
I mean, it's spec'd out in here. The bid tabs ask for the price for recycling, the price for solid waste and yard waste, and the price for leaf recycling. And then, as part of that, we're requiring them to provide services to the city of North Canton government at no additional cost. So servicing all of our buildings and our parks with dumpsters and collection vehicles, and that is not an additional cost. But we specify in here what times and dates we want things picked up.
Thank you.
So I did notice that this 5-year period, there's 4 one-year renewable options. Is that normal? 4 one-year options?
Yeah, what I found is that, first of all, 3-year contracts they don't do them anymore. 5-year is really where you need to be. That's the sweet spot. And then as many options for renewal as possible. Now, I had talked with the county administrator about this subject, and one of the things that the advice that he had given to us in this getting the renewals and extensions and that kind of thing is what they follow at the county is when they want a renewal, they do it in this fashion that we've laid out here, where they have to bid that price now. They have to tell us what that number is. Now, what that does is that gives us something in our tool belt that we've already competitively bid this out. Granted, this we do 5 years, and then we get in the 6th year is our first, renewal. But we'll know through this process what that price is going to be. And as we get closer to that, we can decide, is that a good number or that's not a good number? Because we're able to go around to the other communities as I've done and ask, what did you just let yours out this year? What was the price that you got? And if we feel that it's good, we've already done the competitive bidding on it. And hopefully there's, whatever other logistics that we would have to do, we could just go along and enter into that. But the idea was to try to get as much of that pricing done up front now and see what that looks like. And granted, they've indicated that that's hard to predict the future, what it is. But I appreciate that, but this is what other communities are doing. You're giving prices for beyond the period we need to know what ours is.
Any other questions? Darryl? Yeah, no,
I would encourage.
And before I feel like I'm like in a Senate subcommittee meeting, and I'm the only one here on my side. And I got the whole panel over here.
Put out your set out there.
You're not under subpoena. You're not in contempt. I would encourage us to consider extending the existing contract. The current contract that we have has a provision in the document to extend it. If you look at the language of the enabling ordinance, the dates of effective are incorrect. It was 41/2/16. My suggestion is that we amend that ordinance, provide it with the correct effective dates, A, and B, add the language that's contained in the proposed 4119 at your desk regarding contract extensions. We've already got a pretty good rate. If we authorize the administration to extend the existing contract, we'll have an idea whether we're in the ballpark or not. But I'm pretty confident that if we bid it out, our taxpayers will pay more, our residents will pay more for collection. I just don't think it's necessary. I would like to have a hard number on extending the existing contract for a year. I believe we can do it. I believe it's allowed under law. I know the law director and I may have a little disagreement on what the charter provides, but the bottom line is, I think we can do it. And I've looked at the code, which is a little vague, but I took a look today at Mahoning County's contracting guide, clear references to extending contracts. We do it in effect on change orders right now. We don't send projects out to rebid. I think it would be worthwhile to see where we are in the marketplace before we go to a newer and potentially much higher price.
Well, one of the difficulties you're going to have is getting somebody to tell us what that number is, and then ultimately it goes out to bid. Because once the number is known, what it is,
The extension.
yeah. Then, you're at they're kind of at a competitive disadvantage vis-a-vis others that come in here to bid, because the price is out there.
Yeah.
Tim, what do you got to say about that?
I believe because in the original contract, because we didn't set a increase, what that indicator would be, if it's consumer price index or something along those lines, that we didn't include that amount, that it would be unfair to the other bidders to offer to Kimball the opportunity to extend where we would negotiate a price increase, because competitive bidding requires that in that notice that you send in your bid, if we're going to extend that, then we needed to have a price indicator in there. Because we don't have this, I believe the only way that we would be able to extend this is if Kimball was willing to extend at the current price. Beyond that, the others that would want to participate in the bidding process likely would cry foul and say, we should have the opportunity to participate in this in the competitive bidding process.
So there's possible legal exposure for the city.
I believe so, yes.
Did you have something? Well, the
Well,
bidding
and
process-
there's always exposure, but I think essentially the history that we've had with this contract, that if you go 2 periods ago, it was quite acrimonious with Republic and Kimball, where Republic came in and it was just slightly higher than Kimball, but in the overall package, when we look at lowest and best, price is one of the factors, and there are several other factors which detail customer service, the issue that Kimball, all of its collection vehicles use compressed natural gas instead of diesel. There were a variety of factors that put Kimball above Republic, and Republic came in a couple times and let us know of their disappointment in not being selected. But I think overall, in that competitive bidding process, it was the correct choice for the Board of Control, looking at all the factors, not the least of which was there was quite a few errors in the bidding package, even in their own pricing, that came from Republic, and it wasn't in their favor. And so, putting all those factors together, we selected Kimball 2 cycles ago. In the last cycle, there was quite a disparity. Kimball was much lower than Republic. And it was a 3-year, it did have that clause in there, the ability to extend, but without having the ability to determine what that additional cost would be. I think that unless Kimball was willing to do it for the same price, that because we don't have that indicator listed, that we'd likely hear from one of the competing sanitation companies.
Okay, with all of that said, are we able to do, as Darrell was somewhat recommending, about getting another year out of this?
You're always able to do that. It's just whether or not you're going to, is there a likelihood that you will face someone crying foul? And I think there's a strong likelihood that you would from Republic.
I know the bidding process is an important thing as far as not only pricing, but service. And that's why it's there. And I guess it depends
Correct.
on, we're taking advantage of something that might happen and face some legal issues, or, what kind of organization do we want to be, I guess, when it comes down to it.
Let me respond to this in this way. Our responsibility is not to the competing companies. Our job is to put money in our constituents' pockets, or try to keep it there. I think if we look at the language, the administration is authorized to reach out to Kimball and ask for a price. It's going to know at that time whether that price is acceptable, and it can bring it back to council, and should bring it back to council. So if it goes from 14 to 16, and we know that the bids that are circulating out there are $18, well, we know it's probably a pretty good deal. It's not something that's necessarily going to be public until it comes to for our consideration. I don't know, it's just a question of how much do you want to, is it necessary? Is there anything we can do to keep a little extra money in our constituents' pockets?
Say we go that route and we do that for 1 year. Are we right back here next year?
Yeah, we probably will be eventually.
So you're,
Plus a lawsuit that could be impending at the same time.
Look, we're going to get, as our legal counsel said, let the judge decide.
yeah, but there's a cost to that.
Oh, I understand that, but the
taxpayer.
fact of the matter is, it's the lowest and most responsive bid.
Yeah.
And the code clearly includes a broad range of qualifications, of which Tim has enumerated, some of those enumerated, what constitutes the lowest and most responsive bid. But clearly, I'd really like to know what that extra year would cost us.
I like what Tim said. I thought your idea sounded good, what you were talking about, made sense.
I think eventually we're going to have to bid, it's gonna come to a point where we bid this out. So
Well,
that number is
absolutely.
going to be known, and if we, like Tim said, we we always have exposure at some level or not, but this may be increased. If we
I
go
would
this
argue
route.
that we probably know where the numbers are. If you were to put a list together of all the communities over the last year that have bid contracts, we can go down the list for Republic and Kimball and whatever, and we will know what roughly where the bids are.
I'm not arguing that point at all. I think we have a pretty good idea. I think we can pretty much get,
Where do you think
to
it
the
is?
penny.
Where do you think it is, the new one?
what was it, 18, or what was it, what was the new one? We talked about this, maybe it was you and I or Pat and I. Was it 18, 19, somewhere around
Why?
there?
I think I'd heard a $4 increase.
Oh, increase, well, total.
Is there a contingency in there if the gas goes to $4 a gallon, a fuel charge surcharge? Is there like a contingency in the contract for those kinds of things? So if
There
the
can
gas-
be.
Right, what I'm saying is like Republic always has a fuel charge surplus, or I mean a surtax. And when the gas went from $4 to $2.20, they never took the gas tax off, which upset me. So I'm just saying, I don't, they can back end us that way too. If there's contingencies in there to allow that to go up and not bring it back according to the adjustments.
And
Yeah.
it would be unfair to label Republic as, a litigious company, but they were very headstrong in that their proposal was the lowest and best bid, and that the city had an obligation to select it. The irony with that is that that was their view, and through some legal research, I've discovered that Kimball has felt the same way, and about a decade ago, it brought suit against the city of Canton unsuccessfully in an argument that it was the lowest and best bidder and should have been selected and was not.
And in response, Member Fonte, if you worked that into the bid specs where you allow the fuel surcharge, I agree with you. I didn't put that in because likely what the outcome is if that changes to the lower side. But in there, though, is an allowance for if the federal government or the state government imposes higher fees on the operators, that they're allowed to pass that through to customers. That's what we do presently, so that was continued, but not the fuel surcharge. And I would just like to say that, where the administration is at, and it's really just to try to give you guys more options and more flexibility to do your job. What I want is that whatever the reasons are that we can't do it, to know what those are and to find a way that if it is doable, that we find a way that the other communities are doing it. So if it's because it's over 50,000, it has to be bid, and technically this extension isn't being bid, if that's the rule, great. And that's why I've put it in here that I want that price bid now so that we know what that price is going to be, and we address that issue. If there's another issue, I'm all for trying to find a way to give you guys more options to guide the city. So that's really all it is. And it doesn't matter to me what they are. I just want to not be shooting fish in the dark here.
I have a question, Mark. What did we do at last contract, when the last contract was up? Did we rebid it for 3 or 5 years, or did we give a contract extension, a year extension?
No, it was rebid.
And what about the time before that?
It was rebid.
So I err on the side of caution. I go with rebid. I'm thrilled that Pat has put the performance bonds in it, and the other stuff it sounds like we could really use in case things go awry, but I'm for rebidding it.
I'm not. And, if this thing goes up $4, it's 12, it's times 12. We're taking $50 out of residents' pockets that I don't think we need to when we don't really know what the cost for the extension is. We're just simply saying, well, we're going to rebid it. We have no idea what a year's extension costs. And I think that is real, at the end of the day, that does our constituents a real disservice. We're going to ask them for things like a fire safety building and some other things. Let's save the ask when we really got to dig into their pockets for that. If we don't have to do it for trash, let's not do it. That's all I'm saying. Done.
Daryl, you said you have other cities that have done extensions?
Yes.
Yeah, but pretty much every the 8 communities I looked at, they all do extensions. They're all in the bid specs. They all extend.
For the 1 year?
The most common is 1 year, yes. And that's why I went with the 1 year.
I think it's a good idea. I really do.
I'm not for it.
I think.
I'm not for, oh, go ahead.
I think the way it's spelled out here is good. You know, you have a 1-year contract, you have an option to work with them. If you don't like, for example, if you have a 1-year bid and you revisit that in 1 year, if you don't like the specs, can you renegotiate it? Can you cancel it?
We've asked them to give us a price for the first 5 years of this contract, plus the price in years 6, 7, 8, and 9, so that we know today, in 2019, what the bid price is for 6, 7, 8, 9 years from now.
If something happens that there's in 2 years, the market changes and it's way more competitive, like how natural gas was. Could we break our contract? Is there a clause in there to renegotiate? Or are we locked in for that 5-year spell no matter what?
You're locked in for this 5-year service agreement.
There's no wiggle room?
Each side's taking a chance on
It's kind of like
the
aggregation.
longer-
We're doing aggregation, basically.
longer-term contracts, each side's
Like
taking a chance.
gas.
Yeah, but what you have here, though, different than aggregation, aggregation is a commodity, and it's based on what's happening in the commodities markets, across the world, is determining the prices of those things. Here, we're talking about their service. So to ask yourself, are their labor costs going to go up over the next 5 years? Are their service costs, all these other things that they do, I'd like to lock them into a rate that the community can enjoy some stability there rather than every 3 years.
What's the rate from now for the 7-8 year span? Like, what's the span? How many dollars per ton, or however you guys do it?
Well, I mean, the contract price that we have presently is $14.03. That's for every resident that's getting curbside service. It includes unlimited solid waste and unlimited yard waste and then unlimited recycling. So it's $14.03 per unit per month.
And what will it be next year and then the following year? Like
Well,
how much?
that's the purpose of the bid, is to find out. But
Okay,
if we
so-
look at, as an example, if we were to take Doylestown, which just concluded theirs 2 months ago in March. Now, they have some other competitors over there that we don't have here yet. I don't know if they'll get here, but they have a current carrier over there called Rumpke, Rumpke. They're out of Cincinnati. And they were the current contract holder, and the price that Doylestown was paying was $9.85. Now, that was put out for bid, and there were 3 bidders: Rumpke, Republic, and Kimball. Republic came in at, this is my recollection, it could be off a penny or two, $17.87. Kimball came in at $15.13, and Rumpke came in at $13.15. So they experienced almost a 50% increase. And I looked at all kinds of other communities in Northeast Ohio. I mean, it's legitimate that their costs are going up.
Let me, so a lot of times, like things I've seen, you can sign up for like a 1-year service plan, right? And you write that into the plan. So we didn't do that, correct? Did these other communities, when they put their plan together, they said, we'll do it for 3 years with the option for a 1-year extension?
Yes.
Okay, so we didn't do that.
The bid documents that we've been using the last couple times didn't specify, hey, we want you to give us an alternate bid. What we've allowed for is someone to submit additional remarks to the bid documents to say, these are some things that we might do different, that might save you money. And one of the ones, I think it was item number 6 in the list that Kimball gave, was we would be able to come back, give you an extension on your contract at a mutually agreed price, something to that effect. Technically, that wasn't part of the bid documents, but in the form of agreement, I'm not the attorney, so I'm just going by what I read, but the form of the agreement says that all the things that are part of this agreement are the bid documents and the responses and that kind of thing. But so in our current one, we've made that better by specifically asking for it.
And you've done that in the new one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see it here in the remarks. It just seems like we're a little bit stuck, right? We didn't ask for the extension, and it seems at this point to go back and be like, hey, we noticed prices are going up, by the way, we'd like an extension. I don't know.
It's not a bid. And the point is,
But all the other places put that extension in there.
I understand that, but what we have is we have the language here that allows us, in the remarks, which is part of the agreement, if you look at the entire packet, which I have,
Yeah,
I believe we're authorized to pick up the phone and ask what the cost would be for an extension. And based upon that communication, then we have an idea whether we want to bid it or accept it.
I feel like those are suggestions for the next time around.
They're not. They're in the existing agreement. They are part of the agreement, which is part of the contract. I think we can over-lawyer it, but it's there, and if it costs somebody $50 more a year, I think we have an obligation to ask.
But what's it cost the city when we have a lawsuit? Again.
I'm not worried about a lawsuit.
Doug?
You are not worried about a lawsuit, Darrell, you've been worried about lawsuits the whole time. When
As
you
long-
were in, you were worried about lawsuits, stop it,
Not worried.
come on.
Member Foltz?
As long as we got Tim.
Yeah, my comment is, if we ask for an extension, obviously, they're not gonna replace our trash receptacles. They're in pretty good shape. We know we're gonna get a better price when we bid it out. Common sense would say that it's gonna happen. What's it cost to replace everybody's receptacles? Because if you're writing a whole new contract, you're gonna have to provide new ones. You're not gonna say, well, Kimball can keep theirs in a new contract, and
Right.
these other companies have to provide them. So
Property of Kimball.
they're property of Kimball, so I don't know what yours look like, mine's in pretty good shape. I think most of the cities are. So I would agree with Councilmember Revolt's assessment that this price, if we ask for extension, is gonna be lower than anything we bid out. Food for thought.
It is,
Well, that's
but
not the
you're
point,
right.
though. The point is, if we do it, it's only for a year, and we might be going up against some legal issues from what the law director has told us. So from my point of view, I'm gonna go with the law director, who knows the law and reads these contracts, and let's follow the process here and rebid this thing, in my opinion.
Well, where's council at on it? I guess that's what we gotta discuss.
Well, it is on the agenda tonight for first reading. I'm in favor of moving this legislation forward.
And because it's a franchise contract, there's no emergency clause permitted.
And knowing that there was no emergency clause, I've kind of timetabled this out, that we will get it approved through city council through, 3 readings, although I think we're going to dovetail into, some other meetings that may be presently unscheduled. But get this then in effect so that we can advertise it during the month of June. And I've tentatively put a July 19th bid opening date, but I actually have a couple weeks yet more that I could do. So I built a little bit more room into it. So I'm not pressed for it if we follow the first reading tonight. And
Okay, so it is on for this evening.
It is.
So we'll just let it flow for that
First reading.
step, and first reading tonight for those of you who
I'm in agreement with the law director's idea. I like that route.
Right, so it's on for tonight, we can either vote it up or down the way we want to feel like
Yeah,
our place, that's the way the process should work. Okay.
sounds good.
Okay, that concludes that. This, motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting is adjourned. What time is it? 6:55, okay. Prior to our council meeting tonight, that's scheduled at 7 PM, we have advertised a month ago for a public hearing. In this public the purpose of the public hearing is for council to obtain public input regarding amending section 1171.02, superintendent of permits and inspections of the City of North Canton's codified ordinances to replace the superintendent's reporting official from the city engineer to the city director of administration, and for public input regarding rezoning 15 lots between Howard Street Northeast and Whitworth Street Northeast and Taft Northeast to R2F, two-family residential with a mixed-use overlay. So if there's anyone here tonight to speak in favor or against these proposals, we'll start with against. If you are against either one of these proposals, please step forward. State your name and address for the record.
Yeah, we're done. Thank you. Sorry.
Mr. Osborne?
Chuck Osborne, 307 Fairview Street, Southeast, North Canton, Ohio. I'm trying to follow what you just announced. I don't see any mention of a public hearing on the agenda.
It's published in the repository April 7th for a public meeting for these two issues.
These are your agendas. There's nothing on here about a public hearing.
Mr. Osborne, we've published in the repository. We've met all the legal requirements, and we're having a public hearing now.
Just a piece of paper we're missing that's
You
up
have
there?
a piece of paper.
Yeah.
You have, we have these.
Who combs the classifieds? This is your official agenda.
Are you speaking in favor or opposed to any of these items for the public hearing?
Mr. Peters, you're changing the subject. You do not have this on your official agenda for the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone that wants to speak in opposition of either of these items? Seeing none, is there anyone that wants to speak in favor? Okay. Seeing none, we will conclude this public hearing. And then we will start our regular council meeting in 2 minutes. 2 minutes? 2 minutes?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
No worries.
It was published in the repository. Yes, this is not the agenda. Yeah, you're gonna get yourself confused. Because the other's gonna say, you didn't give us a chance to come in, and we could come in lower.
He's looking at the cost. What he's not thinking about is the potential. I mean, give him.
What was it for certain? Yeah, it needs to be lowest and best.
That's it. Well, the way this is written out is perfect. 5 year with 1 year has been perfect. It's, it really, if we were going to use this was given me years ago. My biggest fear is losing. In essence, if we went that route anyways, all we're doing is kicking it down the road. I favored it. Second part.
Oh, I like that.
Signed for the thing. I talked to Marcia and I went away. I was gone for a couple of days. I'm shaking. Nobody knew what kind of pen it was. I think the microphone that was for some reason. I like it. I think it'll.
Maybe we can come back to it if you wish. If you vote it down, it's done.
All right, we're ready to roll, but if we vote it out, I don't. Say we discuss it and figure it out. If we vote it out.
You gotta start again.
Right, let's see where we stand on this.
Table it, you can bring it back.
That's what.
Okay. Oh, Doug's at the back. Is he back here? He's on the phone with his mom. Tell him we're ready.
Good job.
We'll get there too.
Yeah.
Okay, what we got? Sorry about that.
That's all right, no.
Well, it's part of it.
Let's wind it up.
Okay. All right, I'd like to call to order the City Council meeting, Monday, May 13th, 7 p.m. Opening prayer, do we have? We don't have Mark, would you like to lead us? Sure. All right.
Lord, thank you for bringing us all here this evening with good minds, bodies, and soul. Thank you for gathering or having this place to gather as a community to discuss your will and which way we should go and what the best manner. Help us to understand people and listen and learn by our mistakes, but help us to be leaders, more importantly, under your will. Help us have the courage, the determination, and the compassion to listen and move forward with some of these things that are very important to our community. We thank you for this wonderful community you've given us. Please help us going forward to continue to make it even better. In God's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Laura, will you please call the roll?
Peters,
Here.
Foltz.
Here.
Soretta.
Here.
Revolt.
Here.
Kiesling.
Here.
Waring. Here. Fonte.
Here.
7 present.
Outstanding. Okay, for your consideration, motion and a second to approve as presented. Council meeting minutes, April 8th, 2019. Committee of the Whole minutes, April 15th, 2019. Council meeting minutes, April 22nd, 2019. Committee of the Whole minutes, April 29th, 2019. And the liquor license for Mama Gazzardi's Italian Restaurant at 1107 North Main Street.
Motion to approve as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Motion carries. I'm sorry.
Abstain.
Member Fonte abstained. Motion carries 6. Okay, at this time, if you wish to address council, please step forward. State your name and address for the record. There we go.
Chuck Osborne, 307 Fairview Street, Southeast, North Canton, Ohio. A healthy future for any community begins with continued expansion of its borders, and this is accomplished through a process called annexation. People annex into a municipality for many reasons, but chief among them is for municipal sewer and water. For decades, the city of North Canton has extended water lines outside its city limits to spur annexations. Astonishingly, late in 2017, this policy was abruptly ended when legislation passed describing for the first time duties of a water board that had never been created. The legislation allowed this board, without review by city council, to waive the annexation requirement for city water. Litigation over this self-destructive change in city policy has boiled down to an assertion to the courts that the city had created a water board years earlier under Ordinance 2011, which reads as follows. In the event of any dispute as to changes or any dispute as failure to comply with rules and regulations concerning the use of the city's water works system shall, upon written request by the party aggrieved by, be referred to a board consisting of the Director of Law, Director of Finance, and Director of Administration for review. Said board shall hear said dispute within 30 days receipt of said notice and shall make a written decision to the party aggrieved within a reasonable time thereafter. Close quotes. Jeff Davies, Council's then Chairman of Water, Sewer, and Rubbish Committee, on February 28, 2011, introduced Ordinance 2011 with the following remarks. Essentially, we are going to change some language so that in the event we have people that aren't paying their water bills, we can be as assured as possible that we will get paid, particularly in the rental units and so forth. The landlord will be responsible for any delinquent water bills. Having said that, I would move that we adopt. There is no, and close quotes, there is no mention of the creation of a water board in the plain language of the legislation or in the remarks made by Committee Chairman Jeff Davies. John Snyder, Council President at the time Ordinance 2011 was passed, has provided to me in a signed affidavit that Ordinance 2011 did not create a water board. Then Council Clerk Gail Kapek has done the same. Mr. Revolt, you led me to believe for a couple of weeks last summer that you also would sign an affidavit to that effect, but politics became your priority and you declined. It is too bad that this council body, many of you who served with Jeff Davies, is now taking advantage of the fact that he has passed as you perpetrate a falsehood to the courts. Do any of you know that your attorneys, as well as your law director, have been telling the courts that a water board was created under Ordinance 2011 more than 8 years ago? Council members Marcia Kiesling, Doug Foltz, President Peters, City Administrator Pat DiOrio. Each of you voted on passage of that legislation. None of you spoke up 8 years ago with the passage of Ordinance 2011, and yet this city is now maintaining to the courts that North Canton created a water board. This is a falsehood, and each and every one of you knows it is. You have perpetrated a falsehood on the trial court and now on the appeals court. Where is your integrity? I am particularly stunned with a comment from the appeals court which says, and I quote, "The fact the board was not expressly labeled the water board in Ordinance 2011 does not alter its nature or purpose." What kind of interpretation of the law is this? Apparently, the letter of the law means nothing. One can write the law one way today, and it can be described as meaning something else another day. There was no benefit to the city of North Canton to waive annexation in exchange for city water to multi-millionaire developers. Why have North Canton city officials created legislation highly detrimental to the city? Why have you misdirected the courts on the true purpose of Ordinance 2011? Shame on all of North Canton city officials. And that includes you, Mayor Held, because you signed that ordinance. With great sadness.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Anyone else wishing to address council? Please step forward, state your name. Jack? Welcome, Jack.
Glad to be here. My name is Jack Patterson. Lived in North Canton here all my life. I don't come here very often, but I'm here tonight to express my dissatisfaction with the way the city has handled Arrowhead Country Club. I've been an employee there for many years, started there when I was 16 years old as a caddy. I've been there since I retired from Hoover's for the last 15 years. Past history, when you bought the country club from the Jewish organization that ran Arrowhead, you paid a lot of money for it. Then you had Mr. Lorizzo come in for the first 5 years. After his fifth year, He owed you $175,000, and you took him to court and settled for $35,000. Plus, when he was there in his first year, he took a lot of the equipment, a lot of good equipment, and took them to his other country club in Akron. When Scott DeMusi and Rob Purcell took over after the first 5 years, they had to purchase all new equipment. Now, since they owed you money this time, you took their contract away from them for the next 5 years. I'm very, very disappointed that some of you people have never even been there, don't even know what I'm talking about. But if you'd all gone down and talked to people that work there, a lot of them are city of residents of North Canton, including me, worked there a long time, and have been a resident for all my life here. If you'd have come down and talked to us, we'd have told you what a good job and how hard those two gentlemen worked to maintain that golf course, and you took it away from them. I'm very disappointed in all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Okay, anyone else wishing to address council, please step forward. Yes, sir.
My name is David Linsenbigler. I reside at 216 Viking Street Northwest, North Canton, Ohio. I've been a resident here for the last 5 years. A month ago, approximately, maybe 3 weeks, I had applied to the council to permit golf carts to be driven within the boundaries of North Canton. Per the repository, or quote the repository, council discussed but declined to move forward with possible legislation that would allow golf carts to travel on city streets. My question is, what's the answer? It's been approximately a month. Am I going to be able to enjoy my golf cart? Ladies and gentlemen, for the 5 years I've been here, this is my third golf cart. And until this year, I have had no problems, even with the local police. They even stop by my home when my golf cart sits out and look at it. They can't believe the work that's done to it and what it takes to make it legal, to qualify according to your own state regulations. You have the laws in the state, plus you have to satisfy the State Highway Patrol has over a 25-point inspection sheet that you have to pass. Without these documents in hand, I mean in hand, which is insurance, the registration, and the deputy sheriff's inspection sheet, you cannot get a title for a golf cart for local use, let alone get the plates to drive it on the street. So what I am asking is, would somebody please clarify this for me? Am I going to sell my golf cart, or am I going to be able to enjoy it like I have for the last 4 years? Because this is used for me for other things. I don't drive on Main Street. I drive on the side streets. I have seen so many things in this great city of North Canton since I've had my golf carts that you can't believe. Why? Because I'm traveling 14 to 18 miles per hour on the side streets. I see great homes, I meet people, I meet kids. I'm a single man. My wife passed away 5 years ago. That's why I moved back to this town, because my brother lives right down the street. I used this to occupy my time. I used to be a street rodder. I was in the 60s. I'm a sixties guy. I play sixties music. This golf cart is a way for me to go that I can afford instead of going out and buying a car. And believe me, I did one already. During the last 5 years, I've also built a Pro Streeter Chevy S10 with a 383 stroker motor. That's me. But this is where I put my energy now. But now, the city of North Canton, after 5 years, has put a hold to my enjoyment. You let other small things run around here. You got mini bikes on the street. You've got gyros on the sidewalks and in the streets over where I live. I see a man with his kids ride their gravity machines on my street. They require nothing except $180 to go buy one. I spend thousands. I pass the state's requirements. I pass the sheriff's requirements, but you tell me I can't enjoy the fruits of my labors. So I ask you, would someone please explain to me where the repository says council discussed but declined to move forward? I just ask you, let's move forward. Tell me yes or no. I'm ready to have my garage sale. Either my golf cart goes up for sale or I'm going to start enjoying it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Dave, I lost your email address. If you could give Laura your email address or your phone number, I'll call you later on after the meeting, and I'll explain to you what was going on.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, sir. Anyone else wishes to address council? Yes, ma'am? Step forward, state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. I'm Ronnie Cones. I live at 2369 Radford Street Northwest, North Canton. I come here not just as a resident, but I come here as the treasurer of the Stark County Association of Realtors. And I'm here to discuss Ordinance 40 that I understand is going to be discussed and voted on this evening. And I will start out by saying that we are in hopes that we might be able to partnership and work and put a delay on that vote so that we can have a little more information, as this ordinance came out of the blue in the newspaper a week before last. And my constituents, realtors, and their customers have contacted me, wanted more information and this sort of thing. We've read the ordinance. Other realtors have read the ordinances. People who invest in this community have read it. And there's some confusion. So I'll just go over a few of the questions and concerns we have, and that possibly when I'm done, maybe you might think it would be advisable to delay a little bit also. I would also like to tell this body that in the future, I'd like you to know that we partner with the National Association of Realtors and a group out of Chicago called Robinson and Cole, who do feasibility studies in everything real estate for bodies such as yourself when you're thinking of changing an ordinance or making a change, or you need a real estate study for your community. Always remember, if that comes up to you, to come to us and see if we can help you, because I'm sure we're always looking for the assistance of people who will come to you freely to give you their services. Okay, so the first question that I've been asked is, how did this happen? How did we arrive to it? What kind of study was done? Did we go out and study how many units, rental units we have, and thus how many inspectors are we going to need? Basically kind of saying, gee, how did we get here? And where did this, the numbers come from and the fees come from, per se? And I think that's a good question. So we're wanting to arrive to that as to where the fees came from, the amounts. Also, wanting to know a little bit more what's in it for the landlord. Okay? I can understand what the city may be concerned about, but we are concerned about that also. And I suppose, too, the emergency. We state here in the last paragraph of this ordinance, emergency measure necessary for the preservation of the health, safety, and peace of the city of North Canton. I was not quite aware that we had an issue with our rentals here in North Canton that had to be, so urgent without conversation. So we're asking about that. And then finally, this ordinance is all about 1 to 3 units. So my question is, what about the peace, health, safety of the city of North Canton for 3 units or above? Do we not have a concern about a 4 unit, a 10 unit? What is it about 3 or below units that we want this measure for, and have the burden of those landlords to be paying for these fees and inspections and whatsoever? I'm concerned about what is the cutoff at 3. 4 is as important, a 4 unit? So those are some of the questions, as I said, that possibly maybe we could sit together and work on this together as a team. And I would like to remind you from my body to yours, not my body, the Stark County Association of Realtors, is that we feel that we partner with all the communities in which we work, whether it's North Canton, Louisville, Canton City. I don't come here opposed. I don't come here for. I come here and ask for more conversation if we could possibly let that happen. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Okay, anyone else wishing? Yes, sir. Please state your name and address for the record.
Lenny Lawrence, 225 Seneca Trail, Hartville. So I really don't have a pony in this fight other than I've been talking on the ordinance that Rodney just talked about. I've been president of the Stark County Association of Realtors 3 times. I'm a property manager, I'm a real estate investor, and I sell to a lot of investors. And North Canton has kind of been my go-to community when an investor wants a good place to get a good return on their money and a lot of stability. Investors are leaving Canton in droves. Before Healy was mayor, very few people wanted to go to Canton because of the city code. Healy became mayor, relaxed city code, a lot of investors started going back to Canton. And when Burnaby took over, they came back hard with city code, and those same investors that are in there now are wanting to leave. They're putting their houses on the market, their properties on the market, and leaving. The city of Canton has not regained their property values since we lost in 2007, 2008. And I think it's a direct reflection over how city code was run. If you all want to have city code, I think that's okay, but I think we need to slow down a little bit and work together and find out what's a good fit for the community. And a couple ideas, maybe inspections on complaint only. One of the issues I have with the actual ordinance as it is written is you talk about in the definitions what is a rental unit. And then you talk, like Ronnie said, down at the end, and you're charging 1 to 3 units. In the actual definition, that would include every unit, 1 to 4, 4 to 12, or whatever. So you need to actually change that definition if you're going 1 to 3. I don't think 1 to 3 is really fair. Like Ronnie said, if you're going to treat everybody, you need to treat everybody the same. The other thing is there's a lot of out-of-state investors coming in, and that makes a lot of municipalities scared, and I understand that. But I think a good way to fix that is to require anybody out of state or maybe even out of county to have a property manager, a licensed real estate broker in the state of Ohio in charge of that property if they're not in the county or in the state. That gives a little more teeth and somebody that you local people can go to and say, hey, this isn't done, I gotta do this or whatever. Let's see, did I miss anything? I don't want the city of North Canton not to be the prime spot that it is. And I'm really concerned on how you guys word this ordinance that it won't be. Because if the city, I'm going to be totally frank with you, if you come anywhere close to the city of Canton in your ordinance and building inspections, or they end up anywhere close, you guys will lose values huge. Investors bring money to the community. And if those investors start losing, then you're gonna get all the out-of-state people that's gonna just come in, throw their money in, milk the property and leave. And the values of this community is gonna really go down. And I really don't wanna see that, because this is one of my favorite communities. Although I don't live here, like I said earlier, it's my go-to community for both residentials and investors. Thanks.
Thanks. Okay, anyone else wishing to address council, please step forward, state your name and address for the record. Okay, seeing none, we will move on to old business. Motion and a second to read by title only, third reading, ordinance number 28-19.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor?
Motion to read.
To read?
To read. To read by title only, third reading, ordinance number 28-19. There was a motion and a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Tim?
An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of North Canton, upon Board of Control approval, to enter into a project development agreement with Johnson Controls Incorporated to develop facility improvement measures, a copy of which is attached hereto and incorporated herein, and declaring the same to be an emergency.
Thank you, Chairwoman Warren, or Keesling. Or Warren, I'm sorry, yeah. Jeez. I'm sorry.
Laura coming back in? All right, so we have talked about this, and last time we were here, Johnson Controls had representatives. I think there were 3 people here that answered a variety of questions, and we had a really good, lengthy discussion, and I think got a lot of our questions answered. Do we have more questions? What are we? Laura, do you have anything else to say about it?
I do not.
Okay.
There are some concerns. Mark, you want to start?
Yeah, I had stated my reservations, although I think Johnson Control and the folks there are, again, I mentioned that before, are very valuable. I think in our situation here, this strategy, I really don't think is needed for us. I think everything on here, as I mentioned before, there's nothing here that's emergency that needs done. There's nothing here that we can't, in some particular situations, if not already have done a lot of work on, that we can easily do, things like changing light bulbs now. But one of the biggest thing on here was the sludge presses. And I've been in contact with Mark, our superintendent now, for over a week, and I just talked to him today. And I'm gonna just tell you some things that he has done, just so you know that we can do this stuff. We can budget this stuff. We can do this in our normal thing. Again, I think for some big projects, these people are excellent choices, but for the stuff that is on here, I don't see how we should be going into debt with this. Let's put it that way here. For example, Mark pretty much knows exactly what he wants as far as a sludge press. The whole idea here was to find the people, these folks, we pay these folks, they would find the people and who we would go with and all that. Well, Mark and John Hawkinsmith already visited Kent. Kent has one exactly like he would like. Their output is basically the same, their potential is the same. So it makes them a good example of what we need. With that, based on the communication, Mark knows what size, what type, he knows the upgrades. He even knows, like I said, the upgrades that they would need going forward with. Again, to get this information that he's got just by actually going and talking to people. There's only a few people that sell this stuff. And he knows exactly which one that he wants. I don't think he knows anybody or needs anybody to tell him which one he should buy. And most of these have on-site engineers that will actually help us. So we probably need our own little engineer in that, and Rob could probably be a big help with that in itself here. But I think in this situation, it's like me wanting to buy a lawnmower. Okay, I know what kind of lawn I have. I go to my neighbor, he has the same kind of lawn. I like his lawnmower. I think it's nice that I ask him how much it is, where he got it, and I'll go buy that lawnmower. That same kind of thing. I think in this situation, it's easier for us to do that. Again, none of this stuff is immediate. I think it's a strategy that I don't think is a way we should be going down to, because we need a few things and there are big prices that we need to go in debt for. So in my opinion, I'm going to vote against this because I really don't think it's needed at this time for us.
My comment's similar to Mark's. I think the idea of having one person manage everything's a good concept. I'm not sure if we need it for this particular time. Like I said the last time, I'm not for financing any of this, period. We don't need to finance it. I'm okay with strategically doing parts of it. And I was thinking that the 96,000 for the blueprint, and they said that, you know, they're really not in the business to doing blueprint. It has to be really the package, the big package, which is working with us through the process. I just, you know, I feel bad maybe this didn't come out a little sooner because there was a lot of work done on this. I am not ready to pull the trigger yet at this time.
Yeah, Dom, I would agree with you, with everything you said. I think what they offer is a really nice, program, but for what we need right now, I don't think we're ready. And I do agree, the financing aspect, concerned me as well. Darrell, did you have a comment?
I was just going to say, if there's some uncertainty, perhaps rather than simply defeat this, you might consider tabling it and bring it back when we've got some additional information, so it still remains alive.
Is that when we have additional?
Information.
What kind of information?
How much more information do we need?
Well, I think, listen, I think we're particularly interested in managing this sludge issue.
Yeah.
All right? We all acknowledge that.
Yeah.
We heard, at least in some of the comments, that the situation is serious down there, not only from a marketing standpoint, but from a storage standpoint, and a challenge to find contractors to extract the sludge from the lagoons. Right? The press would be, I think what we should do is we should hear from our team. I think we've had some may have been some private conversations. I think we ought to have a public one regarding that option. Look at the project in its entirety and then compare it to what Johnson wants so we can make an educated poll on it.
Yeah, I guess I like the idea of tabling it as well.
Just table it
Because
for
I
right
think
now.
the one thing, I mean, we have heard from Pat, we've heard from Laura. They thought it was gonna be helpful and they liked having somebody manage
Absolutely.
it. And that's great that you called Mark, and he's still not an expert in that, in installing. And I still think we're gonna have to hire a project manager. I don't think Mark's gonna be able to do it. So
I wouldn't say
know-
Mark, go ahead. I wouldn't say Mark would do it, go ahead.
Oh, you were saying we would still hire someone to put it in and
An
install.
engineer, right.
Yeah, so we don't know the cost of that. We have no idea. And when we look at that, we may say, well, this is not what we wanted. Don't forget, we get the money back from this and the savings over so many years. And after talking with Laura last week, you know, I don't know if we were gonna finance it. So there were maybe ways that we weren't going to depth with it. So I like
Let's
the
lay
idea
it
of
all out.
tabling it.
What she's saying is true. So I'm not saying I'm against it anyway. I just for sure don't want to finance it. What Laura was saying is Rob and Laura's been working at the street projects for the water. And if we can delay some of those projects, we can just pay cash for it. If you know, you got a 5-year plan you're working on. Once we know that information, then we can decide. Probably the sludge thing would be the way to go first. That's the biggest cost. You know, I'm okay with tabling it, and then I'd like to probably talk to Mark again, see if he can share with his knowledge, and then see what Rob and Laura come up with the 5-year plan on the water, see where we're at in money, and if we can do something without financing it, I'm definitely more interested. I just don't want to, I don't think it's necessary to do that at this time.
And get some outside bids.
That's really, I'm not against
Well,
the
no, I
concept.
think we had a lengthy discussion on it, and basically it comes down to, is engineering gonna cost more than $96,000?
Right.
And in my opinion, it is, if we bid it out. Consultants aren't gonna come in here and do this for 3% of the total cost. They have their set prices, so that's what has to be discussed. I think there's good
Right.
points all the way around this from
John-
council, but
Well, Johnson Controls said that that's not what they're in the business for, is drawing up stacks of paper. But they're good at the job, obviously.
I understand.
So that's like the benefit if we use them, is we'll get the blueprint pretty inexpensively, as long as they can get the second part of it, which is managing the project. And so like I'm saying is I just believe that probably Mark needs to be talked about, see what the 5-year plan is, see what our money looks like, and then make that decision and move full speed ahead if that's what we want to do.
And I do have a lot of faith in Pat Diorio and Laura Brown looking at this too, thinking that this is a good deal. So this is great dialogue. This is great dialogue. So I don't want, you know, I'm in favor of tabling it too and get more answers if people need it.
Yeah, that sounds good. And I don't want to table it for a long time. I mean, I want to get the answers. I'd like to get, if we need to get another proposal.
Can we have this under council of the whole, near future?
Absolutely.
Then let me, to move this along, let me make a motion that we table ordinance number 28-2019.
Is that a second?
29?
It's 28
No,
and
28 and
28.
28
Well, I can only
dash-
do one at a time.
Okay.
Yeah, 28-19.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Then I'll just go ahead and ask for a motion and a second to table ordinance 29-19 as well, the companion piece.
So moved.
Second.
Is that right? Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Oh,
No, six.
Mark,
Six.
nay.
Mark, did you nay? Okay. Okay, may I have a motion and a second to read by title only, second reading, ordinance number 36-19.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Tim?
An ordinance to amend section 1171.02, Superintendent of Permits and Inspections of the City of North Canton's codified ordinances, to replace the superintendent's reporting official from the city engineer to the director of administration.
Thank you, Chairman McKeeson.
Yes, this is exactly as it reads. It went off to planning commission. They recommended the change as well. We are ready to move on it. Any questions?
No.
I motion we adopt.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. May I have a motion and a second to read by title only, second reading, ordinance number 38-19.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Tim?
An ordinance amending Chapter 155 Personnel Regulations of Part 1 Administrative Code of the Codified Ordinances of the City of North Canton to clarify certain provisions with the sick leave, vacation, and leave absence regulations, and to update titles and compensation of certain positions to more closely align with current and future city operations.
Okay, we've had lengthy discussion in committee. This is the second reading. Is there any further comment on this? Is there a motion and a second to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, may I have on the new business, a motion and a second to read by title only, first reading, resolution 4-19.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Tim?
A resolution pursuant to North Canton Codified Ordinance Section 1181.04, requesting the Planning Commission review, consider, and recommend or not recommend council's proposal to amend Section 1179.10 variances, subsection C, reviewed by the Board of the city's codified ordinances to replace public hearing with adjudication hearing.
Thank you. Chairwoman Keesling.
Yes, just as it's written, we are going to send it off to planning, so they can discuss it, have a public hearing regarding changing the wording in the sections requesting, the variances for public hearing to change it to an adjudication hearing. Any questions? It's self-explanatory. I motion we adopt.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. May I have a motion and a second to read by title only, first reading, resolution 5-19.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Tim?
A resolution pursuant to North Canton's codified ordinance, section 1181.04, requesting the Planning Commission review, consider, and recommend or not recommend council's proposal to amend section 1177.05, public hearing and notice by Planning Commission of the city's codified ordinances to replace public hearing with adjudication hearing.
No, that's, okay, yeah, you're right, okay. Chairman Keesling.
This is similar legislation, or not legislation, resolution sending over to planning as well to review and consider and recommend whether they agree with us replacing public hearing with adjudication hearing. I motion we adopt.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. May I have a motion and a second to read by title only, first reading, resolution 6-19.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Tim?
A resolution pursuant to North Canton Codified Ordinance, section 1181.04, requesting the Planning Commission review, consider, and recommend or not recommend council's proposal to amend section 1177.10, action by city council, to action by city council for similar use recommendation.
Thank you. Chairwoman Keesling.
Again, this is another resolution going over to planning to review, consider, and potentially recommend or not whether we change the wording in that section of the code. Any questions? I motion we adopt.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, may I have a motion and a second to read by title only, first reading, ordinance number 39-19?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Tim?
An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of North Canton, through the Board of Control, to enter into a professional services agreement for zoning code diagnostic analysis, and given that involves a personal services contract, to do so without advertising for bids as permitted by Charter Section 4.05, Contracting and Purchasing, and to do so quickly as to bring relief to businesses that critically rely on seasonal factors for success, and declaring the same to be an emergency.
Thank you. Chairwoman Keesling.
This is the packet we looked at last week or 2 weeks ago regarding the CALFE team coming in and looking at our whole code. I'm gonna look at everything as far as zoning goes in the city. And we have a professional services agreement with them. If everybody's okay with that, we would like to move forward as quickly as possible. Any questions?
No.
All right, I motion we adopt.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. May I have a motion and a second to suspend the rules of council for 3 readings for ordinance 39-19?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And finally, a motion and a second to adopt under suspension of the rules.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, may I have a motion and a second to read by title only, first reading of ordinance number 40-19?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I abstain. You could just abstain, you don't have to.
Jeff, you abstain too?
I abstain, yes. You don't have to step out, we're just abstaining, yes.
An ordinance adopting Chapter 1702, rental registration and certificate of occupancy of the codified ordinances of the city of North Canton.
Chairman Revolt.
Two matters. The first is, I've had an opportunity in another life to have a number of conversations with Ronnie, and you, Dominic. And I think we should take her up on her offer to sit down with us and have a conversation. And Patrick, if you could get Ronnie's contact information and set up a meeting, let's do that. By way of answering your question, I think, Ronnie, we as a body have serious concerns about what's going on in our rental community here. We've looked around other communities, and we want to get out ahead of problems. We can identify them now. One of them, to the earlier comment, are the out-of-town property owners who are problematic. One of the things we are doing is moving toward moving to enforce our general exterior maintenance codes, but that doesn't mean that the interiors are good. And while I can't speak for the other 5 members of council who'll be voting on this, or 4 members, one of mine is frankly, it's safety. We live in a do-it-yourself world with a lot of water heaters and furnaces installed by somebody's brother-in-law, which constitute a hazard to life and limb. We don't know whether many of these rental units have effective smoke detectors. But we do know that between 40 and 70% of all homes where there's a fire with no smoke detector result in a fatality. We had a situation over on Pershing not long ago, or McKinley, I guess, where we had a house fire that took out 2 houses. Couldn't get to it in time. I think there was a little arson involved, but nonetheless, it would have probably been good to have had some warning equipment. So we're serious about this, but I think we'll have a conversation, listen to your concerns, and hopefully we'll come up with something better than what we've got. And so we'll ask Patrick to put something together. I'm going to ask tonight that before we adopt the first reading, I'd like to entertain a motion. Well, I'll take it back. We've only got 5 votes. You're not going to get this on emergency.
Yeah.
Right.
They didn't
Mr.
even read
Revolt.
the emergency.
Say again.
When the agenda went out, it did have emergency, because that had been requested prior, but then Tim came over today and made the point that with 5, we would
Okay.
need to
Well,
take that out.
it is-
So as he read it without the emergency.
Okay, it is in print, and so what I'd like to do before we adopt it, let me have a motion to amend ordinance 40-219, striking the emergency clause.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain?
And if,
Abstain.
2 abstentions, and if we could have just a motion then to adopt the first reading.
Do we feel comfortable giving, I mean,
I can
Any
do a
other
first,
comment?
I can do a first reading.
Yeah, let's,
For myself, there's, what I would recommend is, that I work with Safe Built and the administration so that this legislation more seamlessly fits between it's in the section proposed 1702, which is in between 1701 and 1703. 01 is our minimum housing code, 03 is our registration of vacant buildings, but it doesn't follow the format of that. So some of the changes is just kind of form and not necessarily substance. But one of the key components that we'll need to resolve is there is a great disparity over some issues that are going to be very closely related, and you could have some difficulty in telling the difference between the two. Some violations of the minimum housing code could also be a violation of these this rental registration, but there's a significant difference in the penalty, whereas what's proposed for this rental registration for, say, an element that would be a violation, maybe a hot water heater or a furnace or something along those lines, where it would only be a misdemeanor, which is no confinement and a max of $150 fine. If this same violation were viewed under the minimum housing code, it's a first-degree misdemeanor with up to 180 days and a $1,000 fine per day. And so there's a great disparity between the two, so we want to have some comparability between those, as well as the way that we would want to, establish enforcement. And the administration, the director had spoken previously that perhaps we follow the county auditor that uses an assessment. And if we're able to do that, then we're simply able to assess essentially what the penalty is, and we can do that much like we do for, say, mowing. When we have to go out and mow and we assess the properties, we simply notify the auditor's office twice a year, and then it is simply placed as a lien against the property. But right now, what we have is this this misdemeanor component, and that would compel us to have to bring in the Canton Prosecutor's Office to do that. So I think the administrator and I had talked about perhaps meeting with Alan Harold's office and perhaps, putting, if necessary, language in this that would permit us to have this as the assessment.
Let's do this, Mr. Go ahead.
Couple comments, get through that. I think it's good that we're bringing this to the table. This is something that I know Doug's been pushing it for a long time, the administration, and people have been asking for some of this from our community here. But I think there's a lot of questions, as we saw, from Ronnie and Lenny that came up here, and these are people that are experts at this. I am not an expert at this. I can tell you what you guys wrote is sound fair, and I even had some reservations about the fees last time and everything. And we're good listeners. And I think that if we're going to do this, we need to do it right together with the people that's going to impact the most. And not necessarily agree with those people that it impacts the most, but actually talk to them and sit down. So I'm suggesting that we table this thing and have some meetings and then bring it back to where we feel very comfortable that these questions might be answered.
I think you've got I made a motion to adopt. I think that motion failed for lack of a second.
I think we want discussion first.
Yeah.
I don't think it failed, I don't think it we voted.
Okay. Well, let's do this, and let's table this. We've got some questions. Let's table it. We'll get our meeting together, interested parties, and see what we got. Let's take a lesson from our builder's experience. Have a conversation.
This is important, and it's some good legislation. We just need to make sure we get it right.
So I have moved that we table ordinance number 40-219.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All abstain?
Abstain.
And the follow-up on this will be a meeting with the interested parties.
With what?
The interested parties.
Just a few more comments. I want it brought back. Worked too hard and with different people in this community, former realtors that lived, Ron Wooten, one of them, that saw the merit. Ron Wooten, one of the realtors on our committee before, our citizen committee, that really saw the merits of this. Some of the questions that were brought up just off the cuff. Property manager, I'm glad the Realtor Association or personnel involved with that brought that up. That is important. That's one of the aggravating things that I've seen. We worked with a property over 7 years. Guy lived in California, never responded. It looked terrible in the gateway of our city on Portage. And finally, it got sold, and someone did something nice with it. But that doesn't mean it's passed all the codes inside. I don't know that. My concerns going out is, it depends where your neighborhood is. I live in the older part of North Canton, and that's more subject to the rentals that we see. I don't believe there's a lot of rentals in some of the other areas in the city as much as the old North Canton, or New Berlin, we'll call it. I think something coming at the forefront right now is student housing. Listen, we love Walsh University, Malone University, but I don't want to be next door, and my children all went to college, and some of them lived off housing. I don't want a house sold, and there's 6 students next to me. I don't think that's healthy for your neighborhood. I think that's got to be thought about and how we address that. The problem is, it's been a complaint-driven situation before, and I don't really think we have a handle on what's really out there. I really don't. We always refer back to the auditors or a water bill. I don't think we're asking too much to have an inspection, pay a $100 fee. I mean, it's $8 a month. It decreases per unit. What's in it for the landlord? Well, to have great housing here in North Canton. Our safety forces, our schools, our government provides a backbone for people to want to live here. I don't think it's asking too much that the housing comes up to certain codes. I really don't. We're not trying to eliminate rental investment. We just want it done the right way and a way to follow it and to make sure it's up to North Canton standards. I think it's important to be proactive rather than reactive. I think we've been reactive too long. It isn't 30 years ago. 30 years ago, you paid your house off in my neighborhood for $45,000, and it became a rental in some respects, and there's nobody out there inspecting it, and I can point to them on my street, which are the rentals. Now, saying that, I am not accusing of all landlords to be non-compliant. I'm not. But I think the teeth of this needs to address your weakest housing standards that you see in our neighborhoods. That's the point of it. And I think people are willing to pay a little bit more money, even if you increase rental fees for this, to live in North Canton. I think they're willing to absorb $5, $6, $8 more a month to live in North Canton. So I don't want this to just be tabled and not come back. I welcome the Realtor Association's comments, but I still feel I want this discussed and brought back for a vote at some point, if not by the summer, by summer recess. I think it's too important to the city, and we have to start moving forward on this agenda. Thank you.
Doug, I totally agree with you. We just need to get it right, so let's keep working with it. So
And
are we out with the?
We can answer the one question so that we can resolve it for her. I think her last question was why the 1 to 3, and the 1 to 3, my understanding is that this is to start with a smaller population to work out the bugs, if you will, in this legislation. You get the program running, and once that's been resolved satisfactorily, then it'll extend to all rental properties.
Okay, moving on. May I have a motion and a second to read by title only, first reading, ordinance number 41-19?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion
Nay.
carries. Oh, nay. Member Revolt, nay. 6-1. Tim?
An ordinance authorizing the Director of Administration of the City of North Canton to advertise and receive bids according to specifications now on file in the Director's office, and authorizing the mayor, upon Board of Control approval, to enter into an agreement for the collection of residential garbage, rubbish, recyclables, and yard waste in the City of North Canton for a 5-year period with four one-year renewal options commencing September 1st, 2019.
Thank you. Chairman Strata.
Yes, we had just had a meeting just before this, special to go over what this was. I think we all decided that let's let the process work. There wasn't a complete agreement here, but we've had some really good comments from both sides. And I move we vote for this going forward. Make a motion that we adopt, or not adopt, the first reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nay.
Nay.
Member Volt, Member Foltz, nay. Okay. Thank you. Reports, Deputy Director of Administration, Farina.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just have one brief note, just looking at the council calendar to let you know that the project with moving of council chambers down to the Civic Center will begin that first week, as soon as you're out. So that's the timeline we have to keep with that break going from the 15th of July through August 12th. And we'll start with the technology upgrades, then we'll do the wiring configuration, sound and audio, and proceed to the construction. We may have some questions for you in between there, and we'll give you a call and we'll let you know how it's progressing, so it's ready to go when you're back from break. That's all.
Thank you. Engineer Graham.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I was hoping to report that both our paving program and Price Park Phase 2 would be done by tonight, but Mother Nature saw otherwise. We're real close with both projects, really just another day of paving, and we'll have them both. We're rained out Friday and today, so we'll try tomorrow and maybe Wednesday. But both projects are moving along real nice until the weather hampered us a little bit, but it is Ohio and it's early in the year yet, so. That's my only report.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Mayor.
Yes, the first report we have is Captain Jack. It's nice to see you up here again. 50 years of service for the city of North Canton in our fire department. And you've been retired from there for 4 years. And my first introduction to Captain Jack was when I was a junior in high school and I was wrestling Rich Rhodes over here at the Hoover High School. And I lost that match. But you did a good job refereeing. I'm not gonna blame you. 3-1. Yeah, that's right. So good to see you again. You know, in reference to, so I'll answer your question and then also address where we're going with the Arrowhead Country Club, or what's known as Arrowhead. The city owns that 105 acres. It's a beautiful piece of property. It's got a beautiful clubhouse. Jack, you've been there since you were 16. It's just a great asset for the city. One of the challenges that we were facing was that the previous gentlemen that were leasing it, RNS, you know, they love the community. They love providing service to the people in North Canton. The struggle that they ran into was the same that you had mentioned, Jack, that Kevin Larissa had ran into. That the terms of the agreement were just too much given the market for golf. So therefore, they were not able to pay what the city was expecting for their lease. So the city was collecting payments from them on certain months. On other months, there was no payment. But again, it was, I think there was a variety of reasons, but I guess in summary, I would say that it was due to the change in the marketplace. At the same time, regardless of what the reasons are, we have to bring a reasonable level of compliance. And at the same time, we have to, it's not like when you have a tenant, like in a home where you give 30 days and then you just say, okay, you're going to have to move out. In this case, we have the ongoing care for the golf course. We have the ongoing services that have been contracted for weddings, for banquets. So there's a number of events that just continue to evolve. So it's never been very easy for the city to extract ourselves from the relationship that we've had. So we've always tried to do the best that we could to keep this going, to keep the revenue going. But it just got to the point this year that we had to address it because it just kept building and the level of compliance was decreasing. So with that said, we had our city administrator, we had our finance director, we had our law director, we had our deputy director, we had our various department heads. They did a very thorough assessment of the property. They did a thorough assessment of the building. They also partnered with an engineering firm that also did an additional assessment of the property and the needs and the requirements that we had of the building and the property. And so we have a pretty good idea of what those needs would be short-term and long-term. At the same time, we asked for a request for proposals from companies that would be able to come in and manage the facility. Manage the golf course if possible, the banquet center, also provide food service. We also have a swimming pool on the property. And so we had 4 companies. 2 of them were out of state, right? And 2 were local. The one that was local was the present tenants, RNS. And then the second one that was local was the DiPietro brothers. Now the DiPietros, after we went through the whole process, there was a recommendation that was made to me. And then of course we had a separate meeting on council, which although we didn't need council's approval to enter into a short-term management agreement, we did still ask for council's support on that, which we did. So where we're at now is we made the selection, we announced that earlier today, and it's the DiPietro brothers. And really the selection from a financial standpoint was an easy one to make because they proposed the lowest rate. So for the short term, the next 6 months, they're going to operate the golf course at $5,000 a month. And as they're doing that, we're going to be finalizing a longer term agreement, which we will then present to City Council. So it was the rate, but more importantly, they have experience because they own Skyland Pines Golf Course. They own Prestwick Golf Course. They own 11 restaurants throughout the Stark County area, the pizza ovens. They own Papa Bears, and they are very, very successful. They provide excellent service. The other thing is they were they made it clear that they would keep their books open to the city, that they would give the city a login so that our finance director can review at any time the finances of the city, because our goal is to establish a relationship or an agreement similar to what we have with the YMCA at the pool. The YMCA has expertise beyond what the city has ever had to oversee pool maintenance, pool safety, and at the same time, we're sharing in the revenue. That's worked out really well for us. That was a great move. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to follow the same model in that we are going to be paying them a management fee, but then we're going to also take an assessment of the revenues, gross revenues, net revenues, and then the city would get a portion of that. So based on our preliminary discussion and the experience that the DiPietro brothers have, we're confident that the residents are not only going to get the same level of service at Arrowhead that they've had in the past, particularly for golf, but also you're going to have a restaurant open there 7 days a week for lunch and for dinner, and this really brings that economic synergy when we're trying to bring new jobs to the Hoover District. We have a new company that comes in, They have a banquet hall that they can hold corporate meetings at. We also have a place for lunches and dinners that they can make available to the residents and the people in the surrounding area. So it's really, we're really excited about this. This is a win for the city. It's a win for the city. And again, with Rob and Scott that were managing the golf course before, they're really good guys. And, you know, you can tell they have their heart and soul into serving the people of the community. But at the same time, we have to make sure that we're in compliance as far as terms of agreement, and that, you know, we address those items. So we didn't, in that respect, the city was put in a position where we didn't have a choice. We had to take action on that. And so again, I want to thank our staff, our finance director, Laura, Patrick, our city administrator, Tim Fox, our law director, Kathy, our deputy director, and all the other department heads, and the city council for their support in this. But this was really a big win for the city today, bringing in the DePietro brothers. And I think we can see a lot of great things coming out of Arrowhead in the coming years. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Director Diori.
I think the mayor did a great job covering that, so I'm not going to speak on that. If I'm meeting with the Stark County Realtors, I'll save my comments on that for that meeting, and that leaves me with just one thing. So in order to move this interim agreement with Stephen DePietro Incorporated through the legislative process, we're going to need to add this to the agenda for the 20th. And that would need to be on a committee of the whole. And then I would like a special council meeting to follow where we would vote on a first reading. And I would like us to schedule 2 more meetings before the end of the month in order to be able to put this through. And it's my understanding that there was only 4 of you that are going to be able to participate in this vote. So we need some ideas from you when you would be available to do that.
We need it by the end of the month.
We have to appropriate funds.
Just to clarify, maybe, this is for the interim agreement, that the agreement itself does not need council's approval, but the appropriations tied to it do need council's approval. I can't move forward with setting up the account that this golf club company is going to use to operate the course unless I have appropriations to write that check.
So you need that 3rd reading completed before the end of the month.
Correct.
Yeah, we're good here. We'll have the 20th next week, first reading. The 10th would be the 2nd reading.
Before the end of May.
End of May. Oh, end of May. Oh, you're talking end of May. 2 weeks. Oh, my goodness. Okay, well, I don't have my calendar. Can I see it? Of course.
Why don't you have a special council meeting the 20th? Why don't the 4 members that are left see what our timing can be?
I will tell you right now, I'm good on the 21st, the 22nd of May. So we can, as long as you get notice, we can have votes 2 and 3 on the 21st and 22nd. Or conversely, we can do it the week after Memorial Day, 28th or 29th or 30th.
I'm good on the 21st and the 22nd as
I
well.
would just love to get it done.
I am not.
I'm not the 21st.
How about the 22nd, 24th?
Not unless we come in
I'm
early,
not
like,
on 21, 20. 21, 22.
How about we do early?
can we do it early? It would be only,
On which day?
Let's do it before work.
On 21?
And 22.
I'm not here 22.
Oh, you're not here. How about 21 and 23? 7 a.m.
I'll be in
I
my
don't need it
jammies.
that early.
Pardon me?
Be in my jammies.
I don't need it that early.
23 okay for you, Jeff?
I'm good 21st and 23rd at 7 a.m.
21st and 23rd, 7 a.m.?
Yeah, why are we doing it at 7? What time do you do work? I mean, it's gonna be 2 minutes?
Yes. Minutes.
Okay. So I have another meeting at 8. So what do we need to do before? Like, what time do we need to be at work?
7.
I don't wanna do 7.
Early bird gets to work.
Yeah. Can we do 7:30?
I can do 7:30 if you want. Can you do that, Doug?
Yeah, I can do so.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
21st and 22nd?
21st and 23rd.
And this is
7:30.
to just appropriate money, like you said, we don't need to vote on the interim
Interim,
contract.
correct.
Just- That's within their spectrum to.
So the 21st and the 23rd would be the second and third reading,
Correct.
and that would be 7:30 a.m. The 4 members of council that can vote on this. So may I have a motion and a second to have a special council meeting May 21st and 23rd, 7:30 a.m.
So moved.
Second.
For your purpose,
Purpose is to,
Consideration establishing a line item.
yeah, line item,
And before you make the motion,
Yes.
I would just ask the chairman of the water committee if, I guess that won't work, never mind. Forget I said that.
Can we back up a
Thinking.
minute on the 5:20 meeting? That's a special council as well, so do we need to amend the purpose? Because you guys had already scheduled that prior
Yes.
for only
I mean-
certain things.
correct.
Is there any way we could do one the morning of 5:20 and then that evening?
No, you can't double up the same day.
Okay.
But can we not just add it to the 5:20 special, just
Yeah,
add another
I
meeting?
recommend you do, yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, I got another idea. Could we do it later this week?
no. I can't. This week's, I can't.
I mean, that meeting's already scheduled. I'm only talking about adding
The
one more
20th.
reason to it tonight, so that you,
We couldn't this week because I didn't hear that.
We already are doing that one, Laura.
Okay, so, yeah, we already are doing that, so we got the 20th, the 21st, and the 23rd. Special council
Wait, are
meetings.
we missing something?
So I
we
want,
already have a special meeting on the 20th, but when you guys set that meeting, it was for certain purposes.
Right.
So now you need to add the
Right.
golf course as an additional
Amend
purpose.
the agenda, including public speaks. For it. It's the
Sure.
first reading,
yes.
What day is that, Doug?
20th.
Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday.
It's the 20th, 21st, and 23rd.
All right, so,
And do you want public speaks on all?
yes, all three.
Yes.
So we have a motion and a second to set a special council meeting for the 21st and 23rd regarding the line item agenda, or line item that we have to establish per our finance director for the golf course contract,
Interim,
interim contract, and also to include this item on the special committee meeting on the 20th. Did I cover everything?
Yes, sir.
That's your motion?
I need a motion.
I'll make that motion.
And I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. You got that, Laura?
Got it, thank you.
Abstain, yeah.
Abstain.
Yeah.
Just to the record note, there was
Yeah.
4 affirmative votes. for
Yeah,
this.
4 affirmative
There were
votes.
3 abstains.
Members Soretta, Kiesling, and Fonte abstained.
Yes.
Okay, Pat, does that conclude
That's
your
it.
comments?
Thank you.
Director of Finance.
Thank you. Everyone should have in front of them a sheet of paper with a lot of numbers and some yellow highlights. If you could pull that out, please. Per the charter, each year I am to provide the anticipated income for the following year to Mayor and Council by May 15th, so that's what we're doing tonight. As we've had the past couple years that I've provided this, you have the 2018 actual revenues for each fund, the 19 estimates as they stand currently, and then my first look at 2020, and then just the increase, decrease. A couple that I'd like to point out to you, if you look at the total for 2020 as compared to 19, you'll see it's quite a drop. The primary driver on that is grants. This year's budget had a lot of grants for both the park project as well as numerous road projects. So we don't see those in 2020. The other thing that impacts is the general fund. You can see general fund's a lot higher in 19 than 20. That's because we had advances out of general fund to cover those grants until the dollars are reimbursed. So overall, you can see 2020 is actually an increase from where we were in 2018 in total. So it's mainly just the grant dollars. And we may receive some additional road grants in 2020, but we weren't quite sure on those just yet. A couple of other things I'll point out to you. Income tax, that's the second line. I have that at 7.8 million currently. It's about 100,000 drop from my estimate for this year. Just checked today, we received our settlement today on income tax, and we're coming in right at where I estimated, if not a little ahead, but we always like to be conservative. If you go down to Fund 208, about a quarter of the way down the page, that's our street fund, and you can see that shows quite an increase. That is due to those additional gas tax monies that'll be coming from the state. We'll skip down to 331 and 332. Again, those are those grant funds, both for the park and the roads, and you see that we have zeros in for next year. And then the last thing I want to draw your attention to is the two funds in yellow, 209 and 210. That's our storm sewer levy and our street levy. Those levies are 5-year renewals. We go back to the voters and ask for those to be renewed every 5 years. Those levies will expire at the end of 2020. So that means that our first opportunity to ask voters to renew would be in November of 19. In order to do that, we need to get 2 resolutions, one asking the county auditor to certify the amount, and then the second to put it on the ballot, the Board of Elections. So if you all are interested in taking our first opportunity in November to ask for those renewals, I'd be happy to put that resolution together for the next meeting, because we do need to start walking through the process so that we have it done by the August deadline to get on the ballot.
Yeah, please do.
Is August too late?
No, we gotta get it on, we've gotta get it down to the board by August, by our filing deadline.
Right.
Sounds like a
We
good.
really don't have much time when it comes up to our spring, or summer break, so.
Right, so that's why, like I said, if you want that on, we'll get that on for next committee meeting, and then start moving those through.
It'll be next Monday.
Can you, well, it's a special Monday, you'd have to amend that.
It's a special
committee.
council, it's a special council meeting, not committee.
Yeah.
Regular committee.
Committee's regular,
Yeah, do it on the 3rd.
so, yeah.
Or we could do it on the 3rd.
But if I can get those to you for next week, and then you could vote on them at the next regular meeting on the 10th, and then we'd have the second resolution, following that, to actually place it on the ballot. If for some reason that voters wouldn't approve those in November, you'd still have 3 opportunities next year, primary, special, and November.
Special and.
November. Any other questions on any of the revenue estimates for next year?
No.
Okay, that's
Thanks,
all I
Laura.
have. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Director of Law.
I have no report.
Thank you. Member Foltz.
I think there's been good comments on the golf course and rentals, and had a good discussion here. So the only thing I'll mention about the golf carts is I appreciate the gentleman being here. The police chief did come up and address council, and he was not in favor of it. And I think he has a lot of weight, in my opinion, of what's safe. And that doesn't mean that you're not safe when you're using yours, but I think it's a door that maybe a lot of us don't want to open, because while you might be responsible, other people won't be. So those are my comments on the record. But I thank you and you coming up and discussing it with us.
That's it. Member Thread.
I'll tag on to that a little bit, Dave, because I was going to say the same thing. Chief mentioned that we have a lot of different situations. A lot of these golf carts are in like special areas like Kelly's Island. The majority are in parks and that kind of thing. We have a problem here with having them in wintertime, and slow-moving traffic. They're very low, so the view. So the chief mentioned enough of those things to say, why do we want to open up this Pandora's box when we're just doing fine? We don't have a lot of people come up and say, let's do golf carts. So I just wanted to touch bases with you on that. And I have a golf cart. It's fun, and I appreciate and respect your opinion of that. The other thing I just mentioned is we did have Little League opening day this past Saturday in the rain. the mayor threw a couple balls. One was outside, one was in the dirt. But they gave him a
They were
chance.
not over the plate.
Without even practicing.
He always
But
puts one.
a lot of people go there again, I say this every year, it is the most attended place in our community in the summertime, day in and day out. And the fields over there just look terrific. I did pitch our banquet center over there. If anybody wants to come out and do a legacy donation, we're open for that, and I think a lot of people would be really excited. They all came up to me, asked me, and said, boy, that sounds really exciting. So we want to keep that going. I know Pat's been ongoing with that, but we do own that property just to the east, and we want to put a banquet center there of some kind, but we're looking for someone to make and we'll also improve the parking for the Little League, because that's all over the place, if you've ever gone there on opening day. But a real nice banquet center there would really be a gem for the community, so we're looking for, that's out there for everyone, so that's all I have.
Thank you. Member Revolt? No report. Member Keesley?
No report.
Member Warren?
Just met with a constituent this week, and they just raved and raved about Eastwoods and the new park and the mulch and the trees being gone and the tennis court. I mean, it really is just such a gem. And you can rent that facility, and anybody from the city can go over and use those courts. They're beautiful, and the lights are on, and it's great. And it looks like we're really moving forward with pickleball and it's all dimensions, and that was good too. So thank you. We're excited.
I'm glad you mentioned that. It really looks good.
What'd you say?
It really looks good over there.
Yeah, and the neighbor was just saying how quickly the houses sell over there, and it's such a prime location, and houses go up and they're gone.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thanks for all your help with that.
Thank you. Member Fontaine?
I hope all the mothers had a nice Mother's Day. I wanted to thank the mayor. He helped out Saturday. My son received his Eagle Scout Award, and the mayor read the proclamation from the state senator, Kurt Schuring, and also provided a letter from the city to the boys. And I want to say thanks for doing that. That was very nice. That's it.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, for the rest of May and June meeting schedule, obviously on your agenda, May 20th, we have Committee of the Whole and a special council meeting. Added tonight, our special council meeting, 21st and 23rd, which will be Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. We will be off Memorial Weekend, or week, back, Committee of the Whole, June 3rd, Council, June 10th, Committee of the Whole on the 17th, and finally, Council on June 24th. At this time, final call for new business to council. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
Sign, please.
You had a good day? You got everything done? Work and job today? Well, we should. We won't.
That's right.
It will. I'll probably call you tomorrow. It'll come to me as I get in the car.
Keep it going, it looks good. Very nice job.